Right, everybody, oh my friends, are you beautiful, intelligent, you conscious, you happy, you you do-gooders, you people out there in the world who is watching me on Strong Inspirations. You know I'm Anthony Brogdon, and I'm coming at you again, straight no chaser.
Hey,
I'm bringing to you hard, man, because you know how? I find these intelligent people and I let them do the talking, like the guest on the show today. Man, I don't know how I found this brother. I'm so excited. He give tours. Black history is what he do.
Right.
For a living. And then they talk about it, and you know what he doing though. Well, watch this, my friends. When he giving these tours, he giving the black slant. He's telling it the way the black people did it.
Right.
He's giving it to you so you understand both angles. All right.
Right.
And then that really is the good side of things, because he's very objective. He you know what I'm saying, my friends? And this is what we do here at Strong Inspirations. He's out of Kansas City, and what's happening is, and I'm gonna go fast on this. My man got he busy. He got things he's got to do, and I want him to go ahead and do them as he shares his story. I did an interview with a guy out of this town called, it's not a town, it's a neighborhood called Quindaro, Kansas. You see, Quindaro is a neighborhood of Kansas City, right? Back in the day, the slaves, and I'm talking about slaves, so you know I'm talking in the 1800s and stuff like that. They walked across the Missouri River, they got to Kansas, to this town called Quindaro, and they told that man, don't come over here looking for me because I'm shooting back. This ain't good. I'm here, I made it, so let it go. And I'm having a festival there, May 27th through the 29th, 2022. Little old me, I want 1,000 of y'all to come. Well, what happened is I found people in that town that's helping me. My man is one of them. When I talked to him, he was like, I'm in. I'm in like Flynn, and I'm so excited. So that's one of the things that's going on. There's a bunch of things going on. You know, I've gone global. I got people on the channel, watch them, out of South Africa, out of London, out of Jamaica, out of Nova Scotia, out of Ireland, and more of them coming because they signing up. I'm finding these people, and we're going to talk about it on the channel, Strong Inspirations. All right. What I want you to do, my friends, is hit the subscribe button. It's free. I want 5,000 subscribers soon. 5,000 of y'all. Just hit the button. It don't cost you nothing. You don't enter no information. Really, what it does is let me know that you like me, which that's cool because I like you. Y'all my family. You don't know it. It don't care if you know it, but now you know it, and it's true. I want you to hit the like button on this video because my man gonna put it down on you. He got a backdrop that's phenomenal, so on and so forth. So like the video he gonna share with you today, my friends, hit the notifications bell, because then as you notice, and if it's your first time, you will notice I'm putting 4 or 5 videos up a week. I'm killing them with this game. And then tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. You know, like when you just have to, just call them up. Send them a text. Say, hey, man, check out Strong Inspirations, and hit the subscribe button. That's all you got to do. Do something. Send them a smoke signal. But let them know about us, because people want to be enlightened. You know, people talk about, well, hey, man, black folks don't really keep the history alive, man. Come on, cut that out. I ain't got to go no farther with that lie.
Right.
Now that we got Strong Inspiration and other people doing it. So do those things, my friend. A couple more things. I'm going watch my movie. It's streaming on Amazon. A documentary I produced. I hired the crew. I wrote the script. I found the people. Took me 2 years of my life to do this, on how slaves learn how to read and write what them racists did to destroy Black business districts, and on the high note, how them brothers as enslaved got skills and owned the business and then used the profits to buy their freedom, and how some of them were so successful that they would be millionaires today. Check it out. I found one guy to be worth $20 million. You don't even know his name. You will after you watch my movie. It's called Business in the Black. It's streaming on Amazon. And I'm so serious about the game plan, I wrote the book, Black Business Book. It got 200 facts. It's similar to the movie, but more thorough. I had somebody send me a message, man. They said that's the most comprehensive, easy to read book that they've ever run across. I cover some of everything in this book. I number the facts. You and somebody else could be saying, hey man, did you see what happened in fact 21, 31, 41, 71, 91, 101, 201? It's in the book. And if you don't learn nothing new, you send me a message and I give your money back. A book with a money back guarantee. I'm that confident, my friends. And every 10th book I sell, I donate one to a school. For some reason, I just wasn't taught that slaves own businesses. I don't remember that. I might have been asleep. I don't know what it was. And I was a pretty good student. I was pretty, I was serious about, getting some of them A's and B's. I don't remember that. And I went to a Black school. So, hey, boom, there it is. Share this with your kid. They can read it from the age of, let's say 9. They can read this book and come back at you and tell you something you didn't know. Mommy, daddy, get you a copy of this. Go to my website, businessintheblack.net. Go there or go to Amazon, go somewhere and get my book, please. And I'll autograph it for you. Now, you hear me use this term strong a lot. That's my favorite word. I got it on everything. Everything I do, I got a license plate that says strong. The strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction on my guest today. He's a strong brother. Watch it. Here he coming on the channel, man. Brother, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and let's get it on. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I commend you for all the things that you do, especially with the keeping Black history alive. Because that's how we connect the dots as to how we got to where we are today. And that will provide our blueprint into the future going forward.
Yeah.
But
tell us your name. Tell us your name.
I'm Eric Stafford. I was born and raised here in Kansas City, Missouri, in 1969. Oh. So one generation removed from the Civil Rights Movement. I'm 52 years old.
Yeah. So now how did your folks get there in Kansas City?
Well, it's very interesting. My parents, my father, his family came here from Mississippi in 1943 is when he came. Then my mother, her family was already here before she was here. She had a Aunt Mag that came here first. And I don't know when she came here, but they came from Pawhuska, Oklahoma. And my Aunt Mag was the first one here. My mother got here around she got here in the 1950s, but her aunt, my Aunt Mag, she was the first one here, but I don't know when she got here.
Yeah.
But she had like a good time house on what is now Truman Road, but it's 15th Street, like around 15th and Olive.
What kind of house?
Like a good time house. A good time house. So she bootlegged and she ran numbers. She ran policy. And right there on the same street as Charlie Parker, when he came from Kansas City, Kansas over to Kansas City, Missouri, he settled like around the same block. But most Blacks after Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal, 1896, Blacks were confined to certain areas here in Kansas City, Missouri. They stayed south of the Missouri River, north of 24th Street, east of Truce, and west of Benton.
Okay,
which
well, hold on, man. I know
you're not
you're
from here,
giving me
so
some
you
good
don't.
stuff. Oh,
That doesn't mean
hold
that.
on, Eric. Let me ask you
That
this.
doesn't
Let's
really
get back.
mean
I
that
want to stay on you just a second, though, man. I gotta stay on you for a second. Huh? So your family get there. Why they go to Kansas? Is there something that what was the attraction to get to Kansas?
Well, Kansas, right after around 18. That's a good question. Right around 1877, Rutherford B. Hayes signed what was called the Great Compromise, and so with that, that's right after Reconstruction, which took place after the Civil War ended, was
Right.
Reconstruction. They had to rebuild the country.
Right.
So you had a 13th, 14th Amendment, and 15th Amendment that were added to the Constitution. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, except in the event that you commit a crime. So you can still be re-enslaved today, and it's manifested through the criminal justice system. Then you have the 14th Amendment, which is equal protection of the law, which is what a lot of our civil rights legislation is based upon. Then the 15th Amendment gave blacks the right to vote. So blacks had gained a lot during that time period. So you have PBS Pinchback, Blanche K. Bruce, Hiram Young, I'm sorry, Hiram Rebels.
Yeah.
They were serving in the U.S. Senate. So they had made political gains.
Right.
And then you have the first, black schools were established.
Right.
Here in Kansas City, Missouri, you had Penn School was established. There was the first school west of the Mississippi River, designed for the purpose of educating blacks, because it was, as you know, it was against the law to teach black slave or free how to read.
Right.
And they could not hold a church service without whites being present either. And so that's when you have all that taking place. But Rutherford B. Hayes, he was trying to get the Southern Democratic vote. And so he made a compromise with them and gave them their rights back. And because he was running for president. Okay. And so once he received their nomination, he made good on his deal, and he removed the federal troops that were there to protect the lives of blacks.
Right.
And then those southern states, all the gains that blacks had made, they took them all back.
That's right.
So you had the grandfather clause, the poll tax, the literacy test, which took away blacks' rights to vote.
Right.
And then the Ku Klux Klan, they rose up, they began terrorizing blacks that were trying to. So that drove blacks out of the South. And a lot of them were thinking they wanted to go. They went to Liberia, Sierra Leone.
Right.
That's
right.
And also Kansas. Kansas was also, there are posters out there telling people to come to Kansas, come to the plains of Kansas. Then there were towns established in Kansas.
Oh,
like
really?
Nicodemus, Kansas.
I heard of that.
And so every year, their descendants they basically came from Kentucky. They go back to Nicodemus, Kansas for an annual reunion.
Because see, now Kansas was a free state all along.
Kansas was a free state all along, but it was a free state legally, but there's still, like, say you run over into Kansas or make it into Quindaro, say you do that, and you run into a white person that knows you're a runaway slave, and they say, okay, well, I know you're a runaway slave, so now you're with me. So they basically can enslave that black person that ran away themselves, with the threat that we can take you back to Missouri.
I got you.
So a lot, just because they made it over into Kansas does not mean that they were home free, or does not mean that they weren't subjected to being treated as a slave, even though slavery was illegal in Kansas, and Kansas was a free state. And Missouri slave owners could always go over to Kansas and recapture their slaves and capture their slaves and bring them and take them back. Then they had slave patrols. What they did was that very thing. They would wait for slaves to cross over into Kansas, and then they would capture them and take them back to their master and receive a monetary reward. That's what their job was. Okay,
with that said, then, if I know this, is there a lot of fights among the blacks saying, because they don't want to go back? What do they do to protect themselves in Kansas? Well, if anything.
Well, you have people that, so like you have Quindaro. So Quindaro, you're right. Initially, Quindaro actually was a city. At one point in time, it was a city on the Underground Railroad. It was established as a port of entry for those people that wanted Kansas to come into the Union as a slave state. So you've heard of the basketball team, the college basketball team, the Jayhawks, right?
Right.
So there's no such thing as a Jayhawk bird. The Jayhawks they were slave abolitionists, and they came from the
Really?
Philadelphia, Massachusetts area. They came to this area to stop the expansion of slavery. That's why they came to the area. And they established a partnership with the Wyandot Indian Nation that had been relocated here with the Indian Removal Act of 1831. When Andrew Jackson, our seventh president, he signed the Indian Removal Act and moved the Indians west. So the Wyandot Indian were given land and money for the relocation. And they formed an alliance with the Jayhawks, and they established Quindaro as a city that would be right off the Missouri River. There would be a port of entry for those people that wanted Kansas to come into the Union as a free state. Initially, Kansas was automatically supposed to come into the Union as a free state. But Missouri slave owners were apprehensive to the prospect of their slaves having the opportunity to cross over into Kansas, where they would have the opportunity to be free. So David Rice Atchison, he was responsible. He was a Missouri senator, and he actually served as president for like one day. But he was responsible.
President of the United States.
For one day. It's a whole backstory to that.
Yeah,
but he was instrumental in getting the Missouri Compromise repealed with the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which gave Kansas the opportunity to vote for itself, whether it be a free state or a slave state, when they were automatically supposed to come into the Union as a free state. But he was a slave owner, so he was able to, and had a lot of power, so he was able to get it repealed and gave Kansas the opportunity to vote for itself and make their own determination whether it be a free state or a slave state through popular sovereignty.
And how did the vote go?
So Missouri slave owners went over into Kansas and voted illegally.
I got you.
For Kansas to come into the Union as a slave state. And so that was right over here in Kansas City, really not too far from where I live, is over in Johnson County. And it's the Shawnee Indian Mission, where the first territorial government of Kansas was established, right off the Country Club Plaza, not far from the Country Club Plaza. But that is the beginning of the Civil War. So the Civil War actually started here first in this area before its official start at Fort Sumter, South Carolina in 1861. It started here first initially over the issue of slavery, whether Kansas was coming to the Union as a free state or a slave state.
Yeah,
and Kansas was referred to as Bleeding Kansas.
Because when I heard that, man, I think I interviewed a guy who said that there was battles among the white people saying we want slavery, some we don't, and they was killing themselves, like you said, before the Civil War.
Yeah, so the Civil War actually started here first unofficially. This led up to the Civil War. And because this is in 1854. And Thomas Johnson, and Johnson County is named in his honor. He had three sons. And I get it mixed up, but two fought for the Confederate and one fought for the Union in his house. So he had a divided house.
Yeah.
And he went back and forth himself over the issue of slavery. So and he owned slaves himself at the Shawnee Indian Mission.
Now, but there are no slave plantations in Kansas for the most part, right?
No,
because it was
not officially. And there's no plantations in Missouri. There were farms in Missouri. In Jackson County, there were farms. There were no plantations. So the average slave owner here may have owned maybe like 4 or 5 slaves. But in Clay County, which is right across the river, that was referred to as Little Dixie. So they I think I've seen maybe 25% of the population may have been slaves, 1 in 4 at certain times. But they had farms here. So Jesse James, for instance, everybody's heard of him, the infamous bank robber. His family's from Clay County. They came here from Kentucky, and they settled along the Missouri River. They were hemp farmers. So they didn't grow cotton here. They grew hemp, and hemp is what they used to tie the bales of cotton together. And they grew tobacco here as well. But most of the settlers, they came and they settled along the Missouri River where the soil was most fertile, and they came here for the purpose of producing hemp and tobacco. And the average slave owner owned maybe like 4 or 5 slaves, and there were some that owned more than that, but on average.
Yeah, I got you.
Jabez Smith out of Independence, Missouri. So the settlers, when they came to this area, they came from the Southeast. They came from Kentucky, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, and they brought their slaves with them. And like people use the highways today, they use the rivers back then.
Right.
And so like most of your rivers are what divide our states. And Missouri is named after the Missouri-Oto Indian tribe, and Kansas is named after the Kansas Indian tribe. Most of your states, a lot of your states are named after Indian tribes. Iowa is named after the Iowa Indian tribe, as another example. Yeah, so had it not been for a slave revolt that took place in Haiti, led by Toussaint Louverture, Henry Christophe, and John Dessalines, when they actually defeated the French.
You're talking about Haiti, the island Haiti.
The island Haiti.
Right, I got you.
So had it not been for that, that's what allowed. So the French, they were about to go to war with Great Britain. And so they occupied where we are today, Missouri, even up into Michigan. You have the Louisiana. We were part of the territory of Louisiana, owned by the French. And so the territory of Louisiana went from as far north as the border of Canada, as far east as the Mississippi River, as far south as the Port of New Orleans, and as far west as the Colorado Rockies. All of that was a territory of Louisiana that was the territory of the French.
Okay.
And so when the Haitian slavery revolt took place and the French were actually defeated, and at the same time they were about to go to war with Great Britain, because the British also wanted this territory as well. So they, in order to finance that war, they sold the territory of Louisiana for $15 million. And then Thomas Jefferson was president at the time, so he appointed Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, and they set forth on the Lewis and Clark expedition. They had a slave with them by the name of York, who was pretty much like a superhero. He was a scout, hunter, and a field doctor on the expedition, and was one of the only people on the expedition that could actually swim. And so it was his job as a scout. He would be the first to greet the Indian and determine whether or not they were friendly or hostile, and report back to the camp on whether or not it was okay to proceed. And he also told them what to eat as well. And he healed them when they were sick. So that's when, after the expedition, that's when they opened the territory up for settlement. And because their job was pretty much as an exploration was to report back to Thomas Jefferson and what was out here. And then once they found out, they started settling the area. And so the people that settled Missouri came from around those states. They came from the Southeast. Jesse James, for instance, his family came from Kentucky.
Yeah, right. Let me ask you this. Let me just do this for a geography standpoint. Where is Kansas?
Kansas is west of Missouri.
And so from Michigan, you go to Ohio. How do you get to Kansas? What's
from Michigan?
Yeah, what's some of the other states that then you get to Kansas? Kansas is in the middle of the country, isn't it?
Yes. Kansas City, Missouri is smack dab in the middle of the country. It's the heart of America.
Okay. And is that ain't the Great Plains or nothing like that though?
That is the Plains.
Oh, okay.
That's the Plains. Yes, indeed.
Oh, okay. So Kansas has this unique history of and then the other big part about Kansas is John Brown.
Right. So, and we're on the border. We're on Kansas City, Missouri is on the border. So you have a Kansas City, Missouri and a Kansas City, Kansas. Okay. Just like in St. Louis, you have a St. Louis and you have an East St. Louis. And it's divided by the Mississippi River, I believe. But we're divided by So here where we are, you have the Missouri River, which is the longest river in the nation, which connects to the Kansas River at what was known as, and that's right in the middle of the United States. That is what is known as Cobb Point. And from there is where our industrial area began. We were the second largest livestock exchange in the nation after the Civil War, second only to Chicago. And actually, I got that wrong. Basically, we were the second largest livestock exchange in the world because Chicago was number one in the world, and Chicago was the only livestock exchange bigger than ours.
Well, okay. So when you say livestock, that's cows.
That's cows. We're a cow town.
Is it still a cow town somewhat?
No, not necessarily. I mean, we have a couple of packing houses, but it's nothing like it was. But that was 80% of our economy came from the packing houses, the grain and feed factories, and the railroads that were right off the Missouri River, where the Missouri and the Kansas River come together at Cobb Point.
When I think of cows, I think of Texas for some reason.
Yeah, a lot of them came from Texas, but they were slaughtered here. And so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So a lot of Black people moved there to work in that industry.
Yeah, they left the cotton fields of the South for the packing houses of the industrial area. That was industrialism. And they came and they worked in Chicago. They worked on the railroads too. But they also worked in the packing houses up in Chicago, Omaha, St. Joseph, Missouri, and especially in definitely Kansas City, Missouri, and Chicago.
What was the worst job that they gave the Black people to do?
Oh, I mean, take your pick. I mean, you gutted cows, you chopped off heads, you skinned because they did leather as well. They did all kinds of things that you could even. It's like getting a bucket of blood dumped on you over and over and over and over.
Oh,
and
really?
You're dealing with organs as well. So it's the killing fields. And so I mean it's lit, and so it's more than just it's cows, sheep, pigs.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So
did any of your family work in that? Because that's where everybody did. Everybody Black did that.
Well, my family, a lot of them were domestics, so they clean homes and stuff. Now, what's interesting about myself is that I have two sets of families here in Kansas City. I have very deep roots in Kansas City because I was adopted at birth, but I found my biological family as well. So, and I'm writing a book called Script from 12th to 18th Street that kind of talks about the effects of integration in the middle of Black America. But it also talks, well, I have two sets of families, and both of them are from Kansas City, Missouri, actually. So I have very deep roots. But so I have a grandfather that worked as he worked on the railroads. Then I have some that I have like 4 different grandfathers, and so they did. And one was an educator as well. So they did a number of everything, but they didn't necessarily work. They didn't necessarily work in the packing houses, but they knew people that did. And but yeah, it was a lot of people worked in packing houses.
Was that a good job? I mean, was it pay well, that kind of thing?
It was considered a good job. It was a viable job, and it was a consistent job, and people fed their families on working at the packing houses. People came here to work in the packing houses.
So as a result, there's a community of Black folks that maybe worked in that job and others that had a little more upscale neighborhood. Is that the case?
Yeah, that pretty much is. But when you say upscale neighborhood, back then, there you can only live, certain places.
Yeah, right.
So, like having a home on 12th, some people had like Satchel Paige. He had a home on 12th Street.
So he's from there.
No, he's from Mobile, Alabama. But he raised his family here in Kansas City. But he came here in the 1940s.
Oh, really?
And he lived he had a home on 12th Street. And then after 1948, when they no longer enforced restrictive covenants, he moved on in the Santa Fe neighborhood, which was like on on the 30th block, like he stayed on East 28th Street, because blacks couldn't live past 24th Street. So the further south you go, the numbers get bigger.
Yeah.
And it going down towards the Missouri River, going, the numbers get smaller. So the street numbers. So in Kansas, people say I'm going down north, which doesn't make any sense because to most people, because north is going
up.
up, but they're going down north because it's down towards the Missouri River, and the numbers go down as you go north because it's towards the Missouri River. So like First and Main would almost put you in the Missouri River.
Well, let me ask you, it's kind of crazy, I guess, to say this, but why did Kansas City be a name for two states? Why did they give it a different name in one of the other ones?
Because the town of Kansas is named after the Kansas Indian, and the town of Kansas basically encompassed Missouri, both sides of the Missouri River.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And so that's why they have Kansas. So they never changed the Kansas part. So they had Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas. And so they're blacks in Kansas City, Kansas, and blacks in Kansas City, Missouri. So blacks in Kansas City, Kansas went to Sumner High School, and blacks in Kansas City, Missouri went to Lincoln High School. So still today, it's really friendly, and it's always been there, but there's always been a rivalry between blacks in Kansas City, Missouri, and blacks in Kansas City, Kansas. And I have family on both sides, and most people have family on both sides.
Hey.
Know people from both sides, but there's still, he's from Kansas, or he's from Missouri. You could tell he's from Kansas. So but that's because going back to before Brown versus Board of Education, if you went to Lincoln High School, which is part of the Kansas City, Missouri School District, you did not compete against other schools in the Kansas City, Missouri School District because they were white schools. And so like Central High School, where Walt Disney went to high school, where Walt Disney would have went to high school, Paseo, Southeast, Southwest, these are schools in the Kansas City, Missouri School District. And Lincoln's in the Kansas City, Missouri School District, but Lincoln couldn't play those schools because they were white schools. So typically, a lot of Lincoln's competition came from across the water, Sumner, because they were in the same situation. So Lincoln and Sumner always played each other. And then even when Central and Sumner, when they began to integrate, and Central would play Sumner High School in Kansas City, Kansas, they may get into a fight or whatever after basketball game, because there's just always been a rival.
Were there riots in Kansas City? As you climb up the years, we had our various riots.
Oh, definitely. When Martin Luther King was assassinated, they rioted here in Kansas City. We've definitely had a lot of social activism here in Kansas City throughout the years, but yeah, they rioted here when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and where I went to college, Central Missouri State University, now known as UCM, they rioted after the Rodney King verdict.
I got you.
So they've always had a history of social unrest here in the area.
Was there any lynchings or anything like that happened there?
Definitely. There's a lynching of Levi Harrington, all through Missouri. And as far as Kansas is concerned, the state of Kansas, nothing really comes to mind right now. But in Kansas City, Missouri. So my focus of history has always been primarily the Kansas City, Missouri area. But as far as Kansas City, Kansas, was definitely there was an attempt to lynch a young black man for the death of Roy Martin, but blacks came together and defended him. And then there have been attempts, and blacks have came together and defended that would-be victim. One was on 18th and Vine, and another was on in Kansas City, Kansas. Then there was a lynching of a Levi Harrington, right off the right in Case Park,
Mhm.
on the West Terrace Bluffs, right overlooking the West Bottoms, which was Kansas City's first downtown, right off the Missouri River. They were about to they lynched a black man by the name of Levi Harrington. And they had a marker there commemorating his lynching, and someone, and this is within the last 5 years, someone uprooted the marker and threw it down on the highway. But it's now being kept at the Bruce Watkins Cultural Heritage Center
Okay.
here in Kansas City, Missouri. But yeah,
Let
definitely a history of lynching. That have we had more lynchings than Mississippi? No, but Roy Wilkins, who uh, who wrote for the Kansas City Call newspaper between 1923 and 1931, he was one of the pioneers of the civil rights movement. He was actually in the room with Lyndon B. Johnson when he signed the Public Accommodations Act of 1964 in Washington, D.C. He wrote for the Call paper here in Kansas City, as I said, but he described Kansas City, Missouri, as an equivalent to Gulfport, Mississippi. You know, it was
really
definitely segregated here.
let,
Um,
let me ask you. Let me interrupt this and ask you this. Okay, if I lived in Missouri, and was life harder for Black people in Missouri than it was in Kansas? And I should have gone to Kansas and got away from Missouri for a little better life?
no, it was hard either side of the river.
Okay.
It was hard. It's definitely comparable. We have more in common. We have a lot in common with people in Wyandotte County than we do. I mean, no, pretty much the same situation. I mean, Kansas City, Missouri is bigger, but and but definitely it's the same thing. It's the
Oh,
same.
really?
It's the exact same thing, pretty much.
I just was wondering, was it a
I
little
believe
different
that
because in Kansas they didn't have the slavery component?
it just wasn't legal, but they still. I mean, just because you made it over into Kansas doesn't mean that you were home free, because you could always be people from Missouri were over in Kansas looking for runaway slaves, for one. And then you could have been re-enslaved uh, by another white over in Kansas with the threat of them turning you back over in
Yeah. Okay.
to
Yeah.
Missouri.
You alluded to that.
Yeah.
As now, as you talk about, what do you show on your tours?
So I do several different tours. I do a bus tour, and the bus tour starts on 12th Street, and that's where the original jazz district actually started. Was on 12th Street. And there's a song called 12th Street Rag, published by Uday Bowman. So jazz has its roots in Kansas City as well as ragtime as well. So 12th Street Rag commemorated 12th Street, which was the red light district. And that's where the original jazz district started. So my tour starts on 12th Street, typically at Gates Barbecue on 12th and Brooklyn. It's the Black History bus tour. And it starts there, and then it proceeds to uh, through downtown Kansas City, Missouri, and then across the river into Wyandotte County to Quindaro. And then there was also in Quindaro, there was a Black school at HBCU called Western University.
Right.
That was known as the Tuskegee of the West, and it's actually visited by Booker T. Washington
Right.
when he was on tour here in Kansas City. But Western University, that's where the Jazz Foundation, pretty much the foundation of jazz was pretty much laid at Western University, or it dates back, or it goes back to Western University with N. Clark Smith, who actually wrote the school song for Booker T. Washington School, Tuskegee Institute in
Right.
Alabama. He wrote the school. He worked for Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee Institute. Wrote the school song. Came to Western University, and he was in charge of their music department, their band department. Then they
Oh,
already
okay.
had another musician there by the name of R.G. Jackson, who he raised money for the school by organizing the students to sing spirituals across the nation, Negro spirituals.
Okay.
And then you have N. Clark Smith, who's the band director. And then they worked on both sides of the river. And so you have Allen Chapel AME Church, Second Baptist Church, over in Kansas City, Kansas, and First Baptist Church over in Kansas City, Kansas, and First AME Church over in Kansas City, Kansas. Those are over in Kansas City, Kansas. Then you have Second Baptist and Allen Chapel over in Kansas City, Missouri.
Right.
But they went back and forth, but they worked on both sides of the river. But N. Clark Smith, he went on to, he taught at Lincoln High School, which is across the river. And I believe he spent time at Sumner as well, but he definitely was at Western University. But he taught Walter Page and Thaman Hayes, Harlan Leonard. But Walter Page, he was in charge of Count Basie's rhythm section when he invaded New York. And so Count Basie, he began broadcasting live right there on 12th Street. His band did, but before that, he was traveling through Kansas City on what would have been called the Chilling Circuit, or the Toba, which was a theater owner's booking agency. But for blacks, it was tough on black ass, because they just couldn't stay at a hotel where if they were overnight traveling or whatever. But it was a Chilling Circuit, and so and you also had the minstrel shows right after slavery. And that's where they a lot of the stereotypes that inflict on us today were perpetuated during that time period. The minstrel shows and everything. So that's how you have black entertainment right after slavery. And so when people came through Kansas City at the turn of the century, and even after slavery, right after slavery, Kansas City was a very wide open and permissive town atmosphere. Anything went on here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. It was
what's the name of the black neighborhood or the black business district there?
It's 18th and Vine.
So that's the name of it. Yeah.
18th and Vine. And then there's 12th Street as well, was another black district as well. And then there were blacks that had businesses outside of there, right off the Missouri River. There was one black man in particular by the name of Felix Payne. And you know how people play the numbers the lottery today. Back then they played the numbers or policy. And Felix Payne, he was a policy king here in Kansas City, much like a Bumpy Johnson or whatever in Harlem.
Yeah, I got you.
But Felix Payne was very, very politically connected, and I would argue to say that he was more politically savvy than a lot of other black numbers bankers, because blacks typically voted Republican right up until Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And then they began to switch their allegiance with him. But Felix Payne and his business partner, William J. Tompkins, they published a newspaper called the American Newspaper that recruited blacks into the Democratic Party. And Felix Payne he organized over 75 black Democratic clubs across the state of Missouri, and it helped swing the vote for Roosevelt. And then as a reward, he appointed his business partner, William J. Tompkins. So William J. Tompkins, who was a doctor, William J. Tompkins and Felix Payne, they published a newspaper called the American Newspaper, American News, the American Newspaper, and it recruited blacks into the Democratic Party. And when Roosevelt won, he appointed William J. Tompkins recorder of deeds for the District of Columbia, which was the highest political appointment that a black could obtain at that time. And so he was in charge of Roosevelt's black cabinet that Mary McLeod Bethune sat on as well. And so they advised Roosevelt on the different affairs of how different programs would affect the black community, and they were the voice of the black community during his presidency. And Truman, who's from Independence, Missouri, or Kansas City, Missouri, he appointed William J. Tompkins over the Negro division to capture the black vote for his election as well. So William J. Tompkins, he was a recorder of deeds for the District of Columbia in the 1930s and the 1940s. Frederick Douglass, he was the first to hold that position.
Right, I got you.
And so, Felix Payne, he owned like 3 different nightclubs, and one of his bartenders was a singing bartender, and his voice was so loud that whenever they opened up, for the evening or whatever, he would just open the doors and he would just start shouting the blues. And they called that calling the children home. But because this particular bartender, his voice was so loud, but he's the first person to put Kansas City on the map with a song called 18th and Vine on the map, which is our black district, which is akin to a Black Wall Street.
I got you.
We
I got
had
you.
you know, we had black insurance companies, like 3 different black newspaper publishers. We had black hotels, black movie theaters, and black banks.
I
We
got you.
had mortgage loan associations
And all that good stuff.
and
Yeah.
all that. And so Felix Payne, he owned so that's 18th and Vine. So Felix Payne, he had a manager of one of his clubs by the name of Piney Brown. And so the club managers were highly revered because they provided the venue for the gangsters and the musicians to come together. So this bartender, his name is Big Joe Turner. He sang Piney Brown's Blues, which talks about standing on the corner of 18th and Vine, shook hands with Piney Brown, couldn't keep from crying, because that's what it was. So Kansas City, they did not enforce prohibition. And so you could come here and, have a drink.
Oh, really?
And that's how jazz developed here. And that's how the mafia actually connected to jazz, because the mafia here in Kansas City provided the liquor for the taverns that were open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So my grandmother came here in the 1940s. She would buy a brand new pair of shoes and wear them out in one evening at Fox's Tavern. And I have pictures of Joe Louis inside Fox's Tavern, showcasing Joe Louis, the heavyweight champion of the world, showcasing his liquor that he was distributing or whatever.
I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he's actually, lived in Detroit and everything, but he would come to Kansas City on a regular basis. He would train on 18th and Vine. But Big Joe Turner, he sang a song called Piney Brown's Blues, and he actually talks about 12th and Vine.
Yeah.
He was standing on the corner of 12th and Vine. But Big Joe Turner, he also was the first to publish Shake, Rattle, and Roll. So not only, not only does jazz has its roots here in Kansas City, but also rock and roll, and it comes from our community, from the Black community.
I'm gonna have to stop you there only because we can keep going, because I know you're an expert at this. Let me ask you, how do people find your tour? What's the website? Things of that sort.
So it's www.kansascitytourcompany.com. Kansas City Tour Company is all spelled out.
Okay.
And I also do virtual tours. When I say virtual tours, I do Zoom presentations as well. Virtual presentations. We do Bebop and Beyond, 18th and Vine Walking Tour, Streetcar KC, a River City Mafia Tour, and Streetcar KC, a River City Civil Rights Tour, and I also do a Black History Bus Tour. Okay. And so, and I also have virtual options on my website as well. And you can reach out to us and sign up on our newsletter, and follow us on Facebook on the Kansas City Tour Company, and then also on YouTube as well.
Okay.
So I thank you for having me.
This is I told you my man was a brilliant guy and was gonna knock it out the box. Because if you haven't heard of Kansas City, now you know. Now you know. This is what I do here, Strong Inspirations. I find these people who are on point, and I let them do the talking. And that's what he's done today. Everybody hit the subscribe button on this video, or not on hit the like button on this video, but hit the subscribe button on the channel. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Go down to Kansas City. Is there a festival in Kansas City that people come to every year, Black History Festival or something like that? Do y'all celebrate Emancipation or any of those?
Well, our Juneteenth celebration on 18th and Vine. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Celebration
we coming
on 18th
down there. We're gonna hang out.
Yes.
Everybody,
yeah, let's get those 1,000 people right here to Quindaro, and right around that time period, because when Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, it did not free the slaves in Missouri. It only freed those slaves that had seceded from the Union.
Right.
And Missouri never left the Union, and it's right here in the heart of America. And this is the heart and soul of America, right here in the middle. So Kansas City is an average sized city in the middle of America with a typical American story that everybody can identify with. So I commend you on what we're doing, but we need to make this a regional, national thing. Black history is 365. It don't stop. And
yes, sir.
This is how we wake people up, because we need to realize who we are.
Yes,
because
because
the world is watching and it's waiting. So
yes, sir.
Go.
Everybody, that's the last word. To you, my brother, I say this with all sincerity. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. I love what you're doing, that you have succeeded beyond expectations, I'm sure, to be the great man that you are, sharing this history, learning this history, and then preserving this history as you do. Come on and get that book out that you talked about. We ready to read it. Everybody check out his tour company when you get down there. Go down there for that Juneteenth. Come to my festival in your town on the other side of the river, let's say. We're going to rock and roll. Everybody, with that, I'll say bye-bye, we out.
Shabbat shalom. Peace.
Peace.